Hey everyone, you're listening to InfoQuench with Jeff
and Amy,
a podcast with tips to make your life easier.
Covering pop culture, parenting, travel, minimalism, and more.
Hey everybody, and welcome to InfoQuench. I'm Jeff.
And I'm Amy.
And we're here for another podcast, and this one is going to be very interesting. It's about a book that was written in, 1930?
1936.
But before we get to that, we have a little story to tell you, and Amy's going to start us off.
Right. We just got back from a road trip. Not too far away. Just into Maine.
Just outside of Portland, Maine.
Yes, and we were probably about 2 hours into our 5-hour drive.
On what's called the Airliner.
Yes.
Which is a really windy road that goes straight through Maine.
If you're from these parts or around Maine, you'd know where we mean. And all of a sudden our air conditioning quit.
Yep.
And it was 36 degrees Celsius.
That's right.
We were in what it was
36.
called, the meteorologist called a heat dome.
I don't know what that is in American heat, but 36 degrees in Canada is pretty freaking hot.
An American heat.
You know what I mean?
AKA Fahrenheit. Anyways, it was bloody brutal. We had to pull over at a rest area. And
it was super brutal. We didn't know what to do. So it just happened to be that the car broke down. Well, I shouldn't say the car, but like the air conditioning went kaput. Like it kind of sputtered at first, and we were like, this isn't working right. And then sure enough, it wasn't. And then
I turned it off and on again.
Then it was gone.
That's because that often works. And
right?
It did work for a minute, and then it completely stopped. And then the fan stopped completely. And then we could start to smell a burning smell.
Yeah.
Which is at what point?
And we just happened,
I think it was at the point where
there's only like 4 or 5 gas stations on this really long road that's,
Yeah, it's a long stretch of nothing. So we were lucky that the timing was such we were close to a rest area. We pulled over and we popped the hood and you could see the smoking belt and sparks and stink.
Yeah.
And I was like, something's very, very wrong.
Now we got to make it clear to our listeners as well that Amy and I are not. We don't know. We just want the car to take us to someplace.
We don't know squat about anything mechanical.
We just know a car is supposed to take us from A to B.
We know where the oil goes, where the coolant goes, where the windshield washer fluid goes.
We look smart with that hood up, looking and stuff. And because we did that, we had some locals come by, and one guy Amy had a keen eye, and she saw a guy with a gas can, so she thought he's got to be a local.
He's filling a jerry can. He had an elderly woman in his vehicle, so I thought he looks like he's probably
trustworthy.
and
would
trustworthy.
Help us.
And it was a Saturday, and our phones weren't working.
Yeah, we were in
no service in the
zone.
area we were at. So, I was in like full on almost panic mode.
Our little 6-year-old Huxley, he was complaining about the heat the whole time, not making anything easier, and he was right.
Well, it was bloody brutal. That's not the feels like temperature. That was just the temperature. And
it was crazy.
So, long story short, it ended up being the air compressor. Apparently the bearings were seized, and a guy came along with a knife and said, I can just cut off the belt. You won't have air conditioning, but you can still drive. And so that's what we did.
And we did, and we continued on our way to where we were going. And so that was, a learning experience, and so we decided to get a whole new car.
It was like we drove back into the 1970s where we had no air conditioning. All the windows were down.
I remember you being really, really worried about it, and I said, honey, we did it. We did that when we were kids. We had no air conditioning when we were kids. I was just worried about
heat exhaustion. No, we couldn't even, when you drive with the windows down on the highway, you can't even hear each other talk.
We could hear each other fine.
It was a little noisy. We had to put sunscreen on because the windows were down.
We did have to do that. We had to do a sunscreen stop.
It was bloody brutal. So we kept going on our vacation, and we and then drove home, and we went right to a car dealership. Actually, as soon as we got home that evening, we went to a car dealership, and we went through the sales process, which is always a fun process.
Which brings us to the topic of this podcast.
That's
we weren't just meandering through stories like we usually do. This one was,
it had a purpose. It had a purpose. So, but I just back to the sales a little bit. We went to a few dealerships, and very quickly, because I've read this particular book,
right,
I can tell often when other people have read this book.
Yes.
And I don't know if you've ever, listeners, been with a salesman who's trying to sell to you, and they're just, you want to buy, but you don't want to be sold to. You don't want,
Yeah.
When things are a little too slick or a little too polished.
And this we should be clear that this isn't the salesperson that we actually bought our vehicle from. It was from a different one, right?
Right. We went to a few places, as I mentioned, and in the end, we ended up going with Aberdeen Subaru here in St. John, and we drive. Our old car was a 2010 Forester, and it served us well. Had a lot of kilometers in it, and so its lifespan with us had come to an end.
Yeah.
So we love Subarus, but when we went in, Paul was great. He was genuine.
Yeah.
Was able to answer our questions,
able to give us a little bit of wiggle room, which was nice.
Yeah, and we were able to, we explored a lot of different options. We looked at brand new vehicles. We ended up going with a 2016 Forester. I have a hard time buying a new vehicle because I know they depreciate so quickly as soon as you drive them off.
We went 6 years above. That's not so bad.
Yeah, 6 years compared to what we were driving. It was a pretty good upgrade. So, if you're looking for a car and you like Subarus, head on to Aberdeen and tell Paul Gauthier that Jeff and Amy McLennan sent you.
Yeah.
So, if you're in sales or if you're just in the professional world, you may be familiar with Dale Carnegie.
Carnegie, Carnegie Hall.
So, when we reference 1936 book, it's the How to Win Friends and Influence People, classic book from 1936.
I have not read this book, just for,
I read it years ago, and of all the books I've read, I feel like it's probably the one that, like I said, when you meet people who have read it, some people can use the strategies quite smoothly. Other people, it becomes readily apparent that they're just going through the motions.
They're doing what the book says verbatim kind of thing, and they're not really putting their own personal spin on it. Because really, if you're going to use, techniques from a book that was written in the 1930s, you got to put your own, modern bent on it. You got to give your own, swing. Well,
you got to, it's got to be, you learn from it. You learn the techniques, but you polish them and make them your own. I'm also horrible at sales. I could never do sales.
I'm not very good at
negotiate.
Sales
I
sell nothing.
So this book has sold over 15 million copies in it worldwide, and it ranks as one of the best-selling books of all time. So we're going to go through some of the key points in the book and just kind of discuss them. Jeff and I,
a precursor to and a warning that some of the stuff is super dated.
Oh yeah,
it's written in 1936. Is that what you said?
Yes, 1936. I actually want to start out with the
do it.
The funniest part, because
read it verbatim from the book.
Okay, so when I read this a long time, I didn't remember all of the details, but I did remember thinking, "Oh, there's some pretty sexist stuff in here." And
I thought you were going to say sexy. I'm like, wow,
well, I don't know. For some people, it might be sexy. Some of these, professional learning techniques might be sexy, but. There was, you kind of read through the book, and I think it was near the end of the book, they had 7 rules for making your home life happier. And it seemed to be quite directed towards...
I was just going to say, not one of those rules are like something that a man can do.
Well, some of them are, but it's
just what men can ignore.
And it was... the whole section was actually omitted from a later edition.
Oh.
When they did a revised edition in 1981, they completely omitted the whole section, and with good reason, but it is hilarious. So
rightfully so, yeah.
So the very first one, of these 7 rules for making your home life happier, the first one is don't nag.
Don't nag.
And this is the background on it, and this is the passage from the book. Bessie Hamburger, great name, Bessie. Love
Hamburger. Her last name's Hamburger?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. Continue.
Who has spent 11 years in the domestic relations court in New York City and has reviewed thousands of cases of desertion, says that one of the chief reasons men leave home is because their wives nag. Or, as the Boston Post puts it, many a wife has made her own marital grave with a series of little digs.
Grave.
So if you want to keep your home life happy, rule number 1 is don't nag.
Don't nag.
Right.
Wow. That's just bonkers.
I know.
It's that stuff would not fly in today's society.
I recommend reading this book because I think there's some really classic stuff that the fact that it applied back then and still applies today because it's just fundamentally ingrained in human nature.
Just read.
Right. I guess that's my
caveat.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Makes sense.
Is that, but some stuff you need to take with a grain of salt and understand that the time frame of when it was written. So take the good stuff, leave the bad stuff.
The really good tidbits of this book are ones that are still followed today and that still have like a lot of immediacy and, whatnot. And that's what we're going to get into right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Leave the sexist, misogynistic stuff.
That's right. Leave it out.
And take the good tidbits. Yeah. But just to finish the 7 rules for making your home life happier. So number 1 was don't nag. 2 was don't try to make your partner over.
Yeah. Don't try to change people.
3 is don't criticize. 4 is give honest appreciation. 5 is pay little attentions. Not pay little attention, but pay little attentions.
Weird.
6 is be courteous.
Yeah.
Of course, be courteous to your spouse. And number 7 is, this is the best one. Read a good book on the sexual side of marriage because it's important to know how to please your spouse.
I wonder if Carnegie has ever written one of those. He's like, in brackets, is like, see my first book.
I know, right? Right? That's his lead in. Well, he did a ton of courses, and it was his courses that actually led a publisher to approach him to write this book.
Oh, okay.
Somebody had attended his courses. Well, there was a whole school of Dale Carnegie, and still today.
Before he was an author, he had a lot of money, right? I mean, he was a philanthropist, wasn't he? I don't really know much about him. I'm just kind of guessing here.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure on his whole life history.
Oh, okay.
I may have known it at one point. Maybe it's in the book. I can't remember.
No, I was just curious because, there's the Carnegie Hall.
Stop trying to get me to make up information that's not true.
I know.
And then I have to do corrections
later on. And then you have to prove that you didn't do the research, and that's hard enough. Whew.
You know what? I wish I was drinking an Aperol Spritz right now, but you know what I'm drinking?
Sparkling water, like
sparkling
me.
Water. We splurged and bought a Soda Stream as our part of our new lifestyle kick.
Those things are dope.
They are. If you don't have one, they're worth the investment. And what I've been doing is brewing herbal tea and kind of cooling it off and mixing it half and half with the Soda Stream. Because you can get all kinds of crazy herbal teas like hibiscus and different like melon flavored green tea, and it's great with the Soda Stream.
You can blend it with everything. I blend mine with a little bit of lemon water or lemon juice rather, which is perfect for me. I like it a lot.
Yeah. So that's our little
Soda Stream side note. That's right.
But also Aperol Spritzes are awesome. So there's a lot of different lists that are given in the How to Win Friends and Influence People book, but we are actually going to do a 2-parter on this topic because there is so much great information that we want to share with you listeners.
Right.
And this episode, we're just going to go through 6 ways to make people like you because we all want to be liked.
That's right. We all like to be liked.
So I'm going to read the little tidbit and then we'll discuss it.
And
see if you agree with this, Jeff.
Tidbit number 1. What?
Be genuinely interested in other people. Oh. And you can make more friends in 2 months by being interested in them than in 2 years by making them interested in you. The only way to make quality lasting friendships is to learn to be genuinely interested in them and their interests.
So what is it that you do? That kind of thing?
Exactly. Get people to talk about
Where's
themselves.
Where's your family from? Oh, okay. That kind of stuff.
Right.
We could practice each one of them as we go through.
So these are the types of things that when you're talking to certain people who are
do you put pineapple on your pizza? That kind of thing.
Well, sometimes when you're talking with people, you'll find that you kind of walk away from the conversation and you sort of feel good about the conversation, right? You feel good about the dialogue. There was back and forth. Whereas other times, it's...
What?
I got distracted.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay. Yeah, it was like squirrel. Yeah. So what times you walk away from a conversation and you feel good about what transpired?
Well, yeah,
and I think it is because
that's the way every conversation should be. You should have an invigorating conversation where you learn something about the person and they learn something about you, and then you just have a great conversation.
But you've ever had the conversation where you spoke with somebody and
many
where they're just it's all about them. Yeah. And you realize you walk away and you're like, they didn't even ask how my day was, or they don't even know what my name is.
I have had too many of those, and those are, and you know what happens is that, and everybody knows this too. Like those kinds of conversations that you have with people, like those sorts of friends or whatever, they become small doses friends. You can't be around them all the time because they're always talking about themselves. And that's one of the things that people like to talk about the most is themselves, but not 24/7.
That's right.
All right, there's my rant.
I think one of the key things about this is to also be genuinely interested in it.
Right.
So find something about somebody and maybe something you don't know about. Maybe they do a really unique profession and you just don't take the opportunity to learn something from them because
so you wash windows in a Spider-Man suit? Wow. In a children's hospital?
Wow, that would be fascinating.
I know, that would be a really good one.
The being genuinely interested is the key part. I think that's the part about, this when we talk about the sale where someone's just trying to sell you. There's a part where that genuineness needs to come through.
Yeah, it's true.
Number 2 is an easy one. Smile.
Smile.
So this one is described as happiness. It does not depend on the outside circumstances, but rather on our inward attitudes.
That's right.
And smiles are free to give. They have an amazing ability to make others feel wonderful. And smile in everything that you do is what Dale Carnegie
smiling
feels.
can be deceiving as well, because I know many people who, when they're nervous, they choose not to smile, or they do it, without even knowing. So like they're smiling inside and they really like this person, but they're not smiling. So that doesn't mean that they're, disinterested or anything like that, which is interesting, right?
It is. Well, but I've always been a smiler.
Me too. Let's smile right now.
Yeah.
Can you see her
Can
smile?
you hear it? I worked at a call center in my university years in the summertime, and one of the things they had was a mirror at everyone's desk because they wanted you to smile while you were on the phone because they said the customer can hear the smile in your voice.
Well, they can certainly hear laughs, but I don't know about smiles.
Well, it's true. I think if this is me smiling, can you hear my smile?
No, you changed your speech completely. You're like, this is me smiling. No, it doesn't fly. No, but I'm sure the people can tell that I'm smiling right now.
Well, you ever heard that they said, like, if babies who get smiled at learn to smile back?
Yeah, that's true.
And babies that smile, people like better. People like smiling babies. It's
a learned behavior.
It's a true story.
Or is it natural? Actually, smiles are just natural, aren't they?
Not for some people.
I know. Those small doses people. Anyway, what's the next one?
Well, do you remember on the Golden Girls, Rose?
I don't know. You're the Golden Girls fan.
In St. Olaf, there was a woman who was born with no smiling muscles. And so she would just stand on her head and wave when people went by because Rose pointed out to her that a smile was just a frown turned upside down. That's a little tidbit for you.
But then it progressed to resting bee face.
Right. Well, every once in a while I'll smile at someone and they will actually ask me what I'm smiling at. That's my default face. I'd rather default happy than default
You should
frown.
next time you should say maybe nothing, maybe something. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. I used to have a pin when I was a kid that said smile. It makes them wonder what you're up to.
There you go.
Number 3 is remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language. So the average person is more interested in their own name than in all the other names in the world put together. People love their names so much that they often donate large amounts of money just to have a building named after them.
Carnegie Hall.
We can make people feel extremely valued and important by remembering their names.
Well, so herein lies the problem. A lot of people out there, and myself, I am part of that group. I forget people's names quite quickly.
I do too. I'm horrible at it.
Yeah. You are, and so am I. It's just the way it is, and it's not that the person's name isn't interesting or that you shouldn't, remember it. You just don't. So there must be. I know I've heard of this technique. You use a person's name
3
straight
times
away,
or something
straight
like that.
away. Like this is you introduce them to somebody else, and then that helps you remember their names, right?
If I see it in print, I can remember it. So if I've been emailing somebody or I see it on social media, I will remember. But I find this technique is something you'll pick up quite easily with politicians.
Yeah.
I mean, politicians know this stuff, how to make people like you. That's what their success is all about.
They know about Carnegie.
Oh, yeah. I doubt you would find a politician who has not read this book. And when people overuse your name, though, it's kind of creepy.
Yeah,
I've had that happen too, where they're kind of like, Jeff.
Oh, Amy.
Or sometimes it's almost combative.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
So, yeah, use that one carefully.
Yeah.
Use that tip carefully.
Sparingly.
4 is be a good listener and encourage others to talk about themselves.
What was that? Can you say that one again?
The easiest way to become a good conversationalist is to become a good listener.
Okay.
To be a good listener, we must actually care about what people have to say. Many times people don't want an entertaining conversation partner. They just want someone who will listen to them.
And not only that, but it's also true that to be a good listener, sometimes it's a good idea to repeat in a way something back to somebody, like whatever they said to you. You repeat it back to them in an interesting way.
That's a good point. It lets them know that they've been heard.
Yeah.
It also makes you sure that you understood them correctly.
And it strokes their ego. To be honest, everybody likes that. So
what I hear you saying, honey, is that when somebody repeats something, you should.
Right.
Or,
you got to validate. You got to validate what they're saying, right?
So what you're saying is I should repeat back what you just said.
Sorry, I'm not listening. What's your name again?
Everybody must hate us because we suck at all of these.
What's your name again?
We don't even have friends. We just sit here and do podcasts.
Have you ever been to Carnegie Hall? It's amazing, I hear.
Number 5, talk in terms of the other person's interest. This seems to be a lot about the other person.
Yeah, it is.
What about me?
Yeah. What about me?
Where's the point about me? So
I don't know.
But this means this is described as the royal road to a person's heart is to talk about the things he or she treasures most. If we talk to people about what they're interested in, they will feel valued and value us in return.
I've never been a fan of royalty and the roads.
I don't know why they chose the royal road.
I don't know. It's all dated.
But it is a good, I actually do some of these things because, like I said, I read this book a long time ago, and I do find that sometimes if you're in a situation where it's hard to get a conversation going, asking people about what they're interested in, you can see people light up when they're talking about a hobby.
Yes.
Or just, if they're really passionate about their career and you ask some questions about that, it can really get a conversation going and develop a rapport.
Yes, I agree. And if you don't know anything, or not anything, but if you don't know as much on a subject that someone's talking about, well, you can just egg them on and ask them questions about it, and then you're both interested.
Right.
Hopefully.
Again, it's a great way to learn, right?
Yeah.
And number 6 of the 6 ways to make people like you is make the other person feel important and do it sincerely. So the golden rule is to treat other people how we would like to be treated.
Yeah.
And we love to feel important, and so does everyone else. People will talk to us for hours if we allow them to talk about themselves.
Oh, they will.
If we can make people feel
sometimes
important
2 hours.
In a sincere and appreciative way,
or 3 hours.
We will win all the friends we could ever dream of. And we want to win friends. It's all
That's
about
all
winning
we want.
friends.
We want to win. Winning, as Charlie Sheen would say. Winning friends. I just collect them like Royal Dalton dolls. Actually, isn't it funny though, as the older you get, I find you tend to not meet as many friends. Would that be a general?
I think we become a little more, maybe we're more picky.
Yeah.
We're more jaded. And we're running out of time.
Interesting.
So our time is precious to us. We don't want to spend time with people who.
That's right.
I don't need to spend time with people who are negative or, I want to spend time with people who make me happy.
That's right. So let this be a signpost to our loyal listeners to, love your friends, give them a hug, call them up and go to a barbecue and have a drink, do something like that, and do it soon because time is wasting people.
And ask them about their lives.
We only have so much time.
Ask them how they're doing. Ask them how their jobs are going, how their kids are doing, how they're, what they're up to, what hobbies they're up to. So we're closing in on the end of this episode. I'm just going to throw in as a bonus fundamental techniques for handling people. So there's 3 Carnegie techniques for handling people.
I thought you're not supposed to handle people anymore.
That's another.
Isn't that like
another episode?
Okay. All right.
So the first one is don't criticize, condemn, or complain.
Whatever, you said that completely wrong.
Thanks. Human nature does not like to admit fault. When people are criticized or humiliated, they rarely respond well and will often become defensive and resent their critic.
Nice try. Don't try again.
To handle people well, we must never criticize, condemn, or complain because it'll never result in the
that thing you
behavior
did
we
was
desire.
completely wrong.
Number 2, give honest and sincere appreciation.
I really mean it. What you did was completely wrong.
Honey.
Well, I'm just following the rules.
Oh.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Appreciation is one of the most powerful tools in the world. People will rarely work at their maximum potential under criticism, but honest appreciation brings out their best. Appreciation, though, is not simple flattery. It must be sincere, meaningful, and with love. I think that's true of a lot of his tips, is that he doesn't want fake. There's no fakeness around it.
Yeah.
You need to develop that
Don't
genuine.
be fake around Carnegie, because he'll know.
And the number 3 fundamental technique in handling people is to arouse in the other person an eager want.
What is with this guy?
To get what we want from another person, we must forget our own perspective and begin to see things from the point of view of others. When we can combine our desires with their wants, they become eager to work with us, and we can mutually achieve our objectives.
I've heard someplace a really interesting thing that if you go into an argument or a conversation that turns into an argument, and someone actually changes your perspective throughout that argument because of what they're saying, and you accept that, you're like open to it, then that makes a good conversationalist for one, and a good human being, because you can change what you believed before you went into that conversation. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely, and I think it's rare.
Yeah,
I mean,
think it's rare too.
Online all the time. You see these arguments in comment sections on Facebook, on News Chasers, and people are so adamant. It's very rare for people to admit that they were wrong or to change their opinion on social media.
But I'm never wrong.
Well, lucky for that.
Yeah, I know.
So how would? But it's interesting you bring that up, because in part 2 we're going to talk about 12 ways to win people to your way of thinking.
Oh, okay. So we might have covered a little bit of ground from that in this conversation, just in our little sidebars. Do you think?
We may have, but I think there's he has some specific techniques that we'll kind of go through in part 2. And, you got to practice these things but the next time, you're striking up conversation with a stranger or with a friend, just try some of the techniques that we mentioned. Smile. Ask them about ask them about them. Mm-hmm. Find out what they're interested in and see how it changes the conversation and the dynamic. And hopefully they'll reciprocate. And hopefully they also read the book and listened to our podcast.
Hopefully you'll be winning friends and influencing people at the same time.
Here's hoping.
Thank you, Dale Carnegie, for all that you have given us, except for all the sexist stuff. Yeah, right?
Yeah. Yeah, except for all the sexist stuff.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
All right, I won't nag you.
Okay,
I promise not to
let's
nag.
just end this podcast, please. Come on. Let's stop nagging me, and so we could end it, okay? All right?
All right, stay tuned for part 2.
See you later, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening.
Be sure to visit InfoQuench.com to subscribe and catch up on past episodes.
You can also check out InfoQuench on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Till next time.